Welcome to another episode of From Scene to Cinema. I'm your host, Darius Dawson, and I'm going to be talking to you about the writing process. Like most of my stories, Trash started off based on things that I kind of went through and saw growing up back home in North Carolina. I'm from Fayetteville, North Carolina. That's kind of like where all my stories stem from. It's kind of like a rural type of place, and you grow up fast in a place like that. So and that's exactly what Trash is. It's about a girl growing up a little bit, maybe too fast, and kind of like all the outside pressures that kind of you face in places like this, which I imagine they're not too far off from what you face growing up anywhere. But I feel that they what's in the story is specific to where I'm from. I guess it all started like I said. I started writing it while I was delivering pizzas in undergrad, and some of the people that I delivered to kind of inspired me, just like watching their life, because I could see their life play out over like a year and a half that I was working there, and I would run into like the same characters, and so I maybe I kind of crafted narratives for them, just seeing them. I'm just like driving the car, so I'm like crafting narratives for them, and yeah, and that's where it all started. I actually, so that was in undergrad, and I actually didn't put the pen to the paper until maybe like 5 years after I had stopped delivering pizzas. I graduated. I went to NYU in Singapore. Then I came back to the United States, and I was working on a film in Maryland. I was like, it's like a student film, so I'm sleeping in the basement on the floor, and then I for some reason, everything from back then just came back to me, and I just wrote it. I don't really plan per se. I just kind of write. I just kind of just like go for it, and I go back and make edits like, oh, this doesn't make sense or whatever. But I just really like dive in. I think that's like my approach to everything. Really, I just kind of like dive straight in. So I wrote it, and my DP was actually also my DP who she ended up working on the film. She was actually there with me working on that particular film, and she asked to read it, and I got some notes from her, and then eventually I was in a short writing class, and I got a few notes out of that class. I think that for me, I have a very I guess that I typically work as a DP, and then I do a lot of different type of films. A lot of them are strictly like narrative. So a lot of times strictly like formal narrative films are kind of not boring, but just like sometimes I get tired of doing them. So my films tend to be somewhat non-narrative, and when you have like a certain type of style, you have to be careful with who you let kind of critique and give you notes, on your film. So you kind of have to find maybe like 3 or 4 people who you kind of like trust to get notes from, and that's kind of what I had to do. There were a few professors and then a few like colleagues that I kind of trusted to give me notes that were relevant, that didn't change the style and what I was going for, and I guess I don't spend like a lot of time in the writing process. I probably did. This is probably the least amount of drafts I've ever done. I think I did about maybe 3 drafts, and it changed from being in a trailer park to being in a cabin in the woods, like by a lake, which kind of worked out for me. That was like the location that I was able to get. It was almost like shooting in a studio. It's like a very secluded place, and it kind of matches what she's kind of going through. She's like secluded, and it like physically, and then also kind of like mentally, like what she's going through in the film. So I tend to look for character actors, people who can kind of bring some of their personal experiences into the character, and kind of almost I'm not going to say that they are the characters, but there's definitely some links between the character. So my protagonist, Angela Morris, a Chicago-based actress who's actually from Southern Illinois, which is a fairly rural place. She was really able to identify with the setting automatically, and then I brought her on not just as like an actor, but like as a collaborator, not just like a collaborator because I'm directing her and she's acting, but it's like how does she feel? How does like what are the subtle nuances? Does she bite her nails? Does she fidget? The protagonist is like a 17-year-old girl, so it's like what do you do? What is it unique about being a 17-year-old girl in a rural place, and so that's what we kind of like explored together. So we found, we may have changed lines, we may have like changed actions to kind of fit, what her experience of being, a rural girl was. So one thing that was really great that kind of is a part of a writing process is she would the character would smoke, and there's an Earl character who she's got this kind of it's an interesting relationship she has with him, and we said that however Earl smoked, she would mimic because maybe that's where she got it from, so it's like we were building this character and building this story together. But I guess like the writing process for me is kind of like this thing that it almost like never ends. Really, it doesn't really end to your finished editing, but at the same time, it wasn't like a first revisions, second revisions like that. More so, it was this thing that kind of like evolved with like the emotions of everyone, like from me, the DP, the actors, even my production design. It's like this thing where the story evolved with all of us because not all of us were from the country and from the rural areas, but all of us could identify with being young and growing up, and that's kind of like what's at the root of trash. So if I had to I'd label my writing style would be very organic. Hopefully that doesn't sound pretentious, but organic, maybe intuitive, maybe more feeling based, and it's all about what's right for you. Because I've written a good deal of scripts, and some of them have been very what I think would be maybe called the studio system, where it goes like these different levels. But I think as far as like the writing process goes, the most important thing is finding those somewhere between 3 to maybe 4 or 5 people who can give you critiques that are valuable critiques and that have done their kind of homework. They don't just read it once and like, oh, this isn't good or bad. They give you such a plain answer. You've got to find those people who are going to be active, because I think a lot of the stuff that I try to do encourages. I try to encourage active viewership. I don't think you can just take it straight from the script and straight into production, because there's going to be things you didn't think of, like I've written scenes where someone is like starting a motorcycle, and then the next scene we see they're not even driving the motorcycle, and then it's like that seems so small, but when you're kind of caught up in it, you may not notice it. So definitely the critique is definitely the most important part of the writing process. And if you're a writer director, I feel as if the writing process doesn't stop until you've got those actors and they're looking at it. And if they're actors who are doing their homework and take their craft seriously, they're gonna make you want to do some, maybe not rewrites, but do some revisions. So yeah, thanks for watching this episode of From Seeing the Cinema. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like us on all the social media websites. Thanks again for joining us, and see you next time.